Deadly, revenge, and betrayal. These are all words which perfectly describe the film Kill Bill 2 by Quentin Tarantino. While the first volume is relentless in its pace and vibrant in its style, Volume 2 dives into the depths of character motivations, slows down to explore the psychology of vengeance, and delves into the emotional fallout of betrayal. Through its mix of spaghetti western motifs, Eastern martial arts aesthetics, and Tarantino's signature dialogue, the film becomes a meditation on vengeance, redemption, and the existential way of the bride's journey. Beatrix Kiddo, aka the bride, is the film's tragic yet resilient anti-hero. From the start of Volume 1, she is shown as a force of nature on a mission of revenge against Bill and his cadre of elite assassins. By Volume 2, however, Tarantino slows down her journey to unveil layers of trauma, betrayal, and introspection. In Volume 2, we witness Beatrix's transformation from an unflinching assassin into a person grappling with the implications of her revenge. Tarantino takes the time to show her in vulnerable moments, like her flashback scenes with her master Paime, who pushes her to her limits, not only physically, but mentally. These scenes reveal the demanding nature of her training and imply that her assassin's journey was always a path of brutal survival. Through her training with Paime, Beatrix becomes physically indomitable, but it is her fight against herself and her past that Volume 2 examines more deeply. This installment asks her to consider whether a life consumed by revenge can lead to anything meaningful, or whether vengeance is a hollow path. Tarantino uses her vulnerability to humanize her, allowing us to see her more as a person than a killing machine. Bill, her former lover and father of her child, is presented in Volume 2 as a multi-dimensional figure, part villain, part philosopher, and part lost soul. David Carradine's portrayal of Bill is charismatic, yet subtly chilling. While Volume 1 presents Bill as a spectral menace and unseen force behind the horrors that the bride faces, Volume 2 brings him into full focus as a man who is both terrifying and tragically complex. Bill is more than just an antagonist. He's the dark mirror to Beatrix's character. He understands her, perhaps even better than she understands herself, and in some twisted way, he still loves her. The film's climax, a quiet and chilling face-off between Beatrix and Bill, becomes a masterclass in restraint and tension. Bill's use of the Superman monologue, where he pontificates on superheroes' true nature, might initially feel like a digression, but it's Tarantino's way of revealing Bill's philosophy on identity and power. Bill sees himself as someone beyond the usual moral constraint, much like Superman, whose true nature is a hero even when he pretends to be Clark Kent. For Bill, the bride's true nature is also violent, and he believes her quest to abandon this for a family life was a doomed facade. While Volume 1 is famously saturated with stylized violence and adrenaline-fueled action scenes, Volume 2 focuses on the psychological consequences of this violence. Tarantino lingers on the unease of each confrontation and the fatigue that comes with endless killings. Beatrix's final battle with El Driver, a scene that could only have been about lethal force, instead becomes an ironic, visceral fight for survival, where Beatrix simply blinds her nemesis instead of killing her. It's symbolic of how, in the second volume, violence is wielded not only as retribution, but as a means of teaching a lesson, or making a point about power and loss. The bride's climactic confrontation with Bill is not the bloodbath one might expect from a revenge epic. Instead, it's a tragic and personal exchange of words and emotions. The notorious 5-point palm exploding heart technique that Beatrix uses on Bill becomes a poetic and almost tender coup de grace, marking the end of her journey, not just in terms of revenge, but in her quest to reconcile her old life with her new one. At its heart, Kill Bill 2 is about the transformation of a character who realizes that the vengeance she sought will not provide the fulfillment she expected. The bride's journey ends not with the visceral satisfaction of destroying her enemies, but with the bittersweet reunion with her daughter Bibi. The final scenes reveal a person who has sacrificed everything, including her sense of self, to complete her mission, only to find that her real identity lies beyond the bloodshed. In a way, the film seems to suggest that the act of revenge itself is a means of purging trauma and loss, but is ultimately hollow. For Beatrix, survival now has a new definition. It's not about defeating enemies, but about finding a life worth living beyond violence. Her tears in the final scene speak to this realization as she embraces the possibility of peace after so much suffering. Tarantino's craftsmanship in Volume 2 serves as a homage to cinema itself, blending genres and styles to create a unique aesthetic. It borrows from westerns, samurai epics, and noir films, all while layering his signature wit and penchant for an unexpected moments of humor. The film's slower pace, contemplative tone, and dialogue-heavy scenes might have had a shock to viewers who expected Volume 2 to be a continuation of Volume 1's action. Instead, Tarantino gives us a reflective, almost meditative tale, as if suggesting that Beatrix's story was never about killing Bill, but about rediscovering herself along the way. Now, despite me saying all this, I will admit that the slower pace of the second film took some getting used to, because to have something this different to its predecessor is a bit odd to me. But after getting to the halfway point of the film, I realized that the slower pace was necessary for the story it was trying to tell. That being said, I feel like the slower pace also made the dramatic moments and scenes, like the opening one of Beatrix driving the car in black and white, come off a lot more edgier than I feel it should have. But then again, I could rewatch this at a later point in time and feel completely different about it then. Now, to geek out on certain details. Seeing B get buried was visceral, with the beautiful inclusion of the screen fading to black, with the noise of her just getting dirt piled on top of her, with no background music or anything. Also, the music in this film, and even the first one, was always the best thing about these movies. The selection was top tier, particularly with the Spanish songs. Dude! While I feel that the way Bud went out was a bit lackluster, I will admit that the confrontation with the bride and Elle was a sight to see. This felt like a return to form and the much needed action that I was craving from the prequel. Having this end with Elle's other eye getting plucked out by Beatrix was the funniest and most gruesome thing ever. Seeing her helplessly roll around while yelling profanities at B was truly something to see. I will admit that for a moment, I forgot about our main character being pregnant, so that when I saw her kid, it hit me like a truck, and I was like, no freaking way! Honestly, that last third of the film with Bill's monologue about Superman and comparing him to our badass killer was freaking amazing. I don't care what anyone else says, I'm standing on that. Kill Bill Volume 2 is in many ways an unconventional conclusion to a revenge story. It turns the action revenge genre on its head by choosing contemplation over carnage and moral ambiguity over clear answers. The film's ultimate message seems to be that, while revenge might offer temporary catharsis, the true redemption is found in leaving that life behind. Through Beatrix, Tarantino crafts a haunting story of resilience, transformation, and the power to reclaim one's own narrative. I'm glad that I got to watch the sequel. I initially watched the prequel partway through my recent uni semester, but now that it's over for the year, I figured why not get back to what I started. Thanks for listening to me yap y'all's heads off. I hope you enjoyed it. This is Black Sugar Lovin', out.